get those yearly. So going down the list here, we have American Cementing, Complete Solids Control, Baker Hughes, Tri-Power Energy Services, Alamon Tool Company, Payson, AIM Directional, B&L Pipe Co., Power Rig, and Turnco. And then I also want to thank, so yeah, let's give them a round of applause. And I also want to thank the Petroleum Alliance for letting us use their great facilities here, and especially Lauren and Annie for helping set all this up. So. All right, a few announcements here for industry events that we have coming up. I guess next Thursday we have a SBE luncheon going on, just so you're aware of that. Friday, October 20th, we have the annual API Oklahoma City Golf Tournament, John Conrad in Midwest City. Following that, I got out of order actually. October 4th, we have the Wildcatters Wednesday talk with Dean Foreman, and that's going to be in Tulsa this time at the Tulsa Country Club. Then for the AADE on October 26th, we're going to have our annual Fin Fur Feather Food Festival. That'll be a great event.
Sign up, folks. Sign up.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we're still looking for cookers on that.
We're looking for cookers and everybody else to sign up, please.
There you go. So get on there and sign up. We have some QR codes on the table. You can scan those, and you can go to the AED website, and you can even pay your 2024 membership dues if you wanted to get ahead of the game. Let's see. Following that, there is the Petroleum Alliance Fall Conference at Jones Assembly and the First National Bank Building. That is November 15th through 16th. And then SBE also has an awards banquet coming up in November, so some good events to be aware of there. The last thing that I'll touch on is December 7th, we have the Industry Collective event. Last year it was a pretty good event, the Zoo Lights, a good event for the family, get the kids out and do some networking and some family fun there. And I did lie, I have one more thing. So coming up in February 2024, we have the annual symposium. We skipped it this year so that we can get it back to the spring. We're still looking for a bunch of speakers for that event. So if you have anything that your company is working on that you want to get out into the industry, we would appreciate it if you could send us abstracts or contact us, and we'll get you on the list to speak at that event. All right. So without much further ado, we'll jump into this. I'm going to introduce each panelist that we have up here, and as I do that, they can share a little bit about their career journey that led them to be up here on this panel and to have some wisdom to share with us. So we'll start out with Robbie Woodard, currently COO and founder of Citizen Energy.
Is this working? Okay. I think my career journey has been pretty short, but I'd first just start with saying, appreciate you guys having me here. It's a real honor to kind of speak at AADE. Drilling is something that's pretty special and near and dear to my heart. That's where I started, so I'm a big homer for anything drilling related, so good to be back. But I started off with Chesapeake, straight out of college, working Fayetteville and the Haynesville Shale. Quickly got recruited by a buddy of mine to come back to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and help Apache get their horizontal drilling program implemented. So was only there at Chesapeake for about a year and a half, and I was at Apache for a year and a half, where we kind of saw the opportunity of what really a failure of leadership would do. And we kind of saw that downfall and what was happening and thought, surely there's a better way to do this. And that's when we ventured off at the bold age of 25, ignorant and dumb, too dumb to know what we didn't know. So a little bit fearless in that venture, but started Citizen 11 years ago, and we've been growing it ever since. So.
Thanks, Robbie. Next up, we have Kristen Lipsky, current VP of U.S. South Central Area at Halliburton.
Hello again. Appreciate y'all having me here. Excited to speak on this important topic. So I have a kind of crazy story. I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, knowing absolutely nothing about oil and gas. I knew three things. I knew I wanted to go to Penn State, I knew I wanted to be an engineer, and I knew I liked geology. And so found petroleum engineering at Penn State. Surprisingly and luckily, I fell in love with it. And so after I graduated, I started with Halliburton offshore in the Gulf of Mexico. I started on the frac boats. I did a little bit of completion tools, ran some completion tools offshore, moved into sales for a little bit. Then I moved into land, started learning about all the land stuff. Then I did a little stint overseas. I worked in Indonesia. I did both land and offshore there. Moved back to the US and then worked Gulf of Mexico again. So I've kind of bounced back and forth between land and offshore, which has been just an absolute amazing career for me to be able to learn both sides of the business. Super exciting to see what's going on with both of those businesses. And so excited to be here, looking forward to the conversation.
Thanks, Kristen. All right, next, Aaron Chang with Continental, VP of Anadarko Basin.
Thanks, Cody. I think you called this secrets to success. I can assure you I have no secrets, and I think the jury is still out on whether or not success is the appropriate nomenclature for me. Congratulations to the rest of you guys, though. How did I end up on this panel? I was at dinner with Scott Witt, and we had a couple glasses of wine. And Scott said, "Hey, Aaron, would you mind speaking on a panel for me?" I said, "I'd love to, Scott," and I overcommitted. So here I am. My journey, like Robbie, started at Chesapeake about 15 years ago. I served in a number of different engineering capacities at Chesapeake. Transitioned with a couple of sales through subsidiaries of Chesapeake, and about 7 years ago, I landed at Continental Resources, where I started working for my mentor at the time. And the one thing that I was gonna, I guess maybe if I had one key thing I'd maybe offer to take away from this group is if you don't have a mentor today, I would find one. It would be the biggest recommendation I would have to, whether you're a leader or aspiring leader, regardless of where you are kind of in your development journey or leadership journey. For me, leadership really began when I found that mentor, began to work for him about 7 years ago. So
Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah.
All right, next we have Nick Gorey, current Vice President of Drilling at Earthstone Energy.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. And when I look out here at this group, I'm really kind of wondering, well, we're up here just because I guess mainly of our age, but a lot of great leaders out here and people that we all look up to as far as on this panel, to each one of you guys. So hopefully we can impart a little bit of wisdom on some of the younger guys and maybe a little glimpses of our journey to some of the older guys that have been in the industry for a little while. So I appreciate it. Started my career seems like everyone nowadays at Chesapeake, who would have thought. Started there for a few years, then moved over to Lynn Energy, which I think half the Lynn Energy group is still here in this room right today. So it's a fun little reunion on that side. When we went and sold our assets off, I got to make a move back over with Aubrey to American Energy Partners, which was then turned into Permian Resources, the original, which is kind of hilarious because Earthstone Energy just got bought by Permian Resources. So it's a full circle there. After that, I made the move down to Earthstone Energy down there in Houston, Texas, and have been lucky enough to move my way up into the company there with some other moves that we'll probably talk about here later on, and getting some more leadership roles and advancing on there. So thanks for having us, guys.
Thanks, Nick. And last but not least, we have Matthew Hinson, VP of Drilling and Completions at Devon Energy.
Yeah, thanks. So, Oklahoma boy, grew up in Uligala. Used to talk about the home of Will Rogers, but now it's the home of Zach Bryant. So that's the popularity of our small town. But knew I wanted to be an engineer. Also wanted to play football, and OU was not recruiting me for football. So I went to school, University of Missouri at Rolla. Actually got a mining engineering degree. Thank you. So got a mining degree and never really had any contact with the oil and gas industry, but ExxonMobil was on campus. So I was like, I'll interview. And so got a job offer in Houston that was substantially more money than a mining job in Western Kentucky. So I was like, that sounds a lot better. So I started my career with ExxonMobil as a drilling engineer, working in South Texas for about a year and a half, and then spent 5 years rotating overseas to West Africa. Got called back into the Houston office and really had the opportunity to get back to Tulsa, closer to family with Newfield. So came to Newfield as a drilling engineer, and kind of worked through there, eventually become an asset manager for the stack. And then the WPX had bought RKI, which got them into the Permian, so I came over to WPX, or again to WPX as the VP for the Delaware assets. And then about 2.5 years ago, we merged with Devon. We ran two kind of assets in northern and southern Delaware for about the first year and a half, and then I transitioned over to VP of drilling completions. So it's been quite a ride.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, so the whole reason around this topic is that a lot of people come into the oil and gas industry and they're reliant on what they know, but then as they move up the ladder, they have to gather skills that require management, conflict resolution, and team building very quickly. So we're hoping that through this panel discussion, we can understand that a little bit better. And with that, we'll kick it off with some questions. I'm just going to pose a question to an individual panelist and we'll let them answer. And if the other panelists have anything to say after that, we can continue the conversation there and continue on like that down the list. All right, so we're starting out with Robbie. What is the most dangerous behavior or trait that you have seen derail leaders' careers?
Yeah, I think, for me on this one, honestly, you could probably choose kind of any of the 7 deadly sins, but, I think if you were to put one first and foremost, I think I'd put pride right up there at the top. I've seen this get a lot of people in trouble. And then, if I was going to kind of give an attribute alongside of that, I think a blind ignorance. And ignorance, I think, is one that's really interesting to me because it's that knowledge that you don't know everything that I think is what makes a really good leader good. But those that have a tremendous amount of pride or too much pride, kind of vainglory, excessive pride, but then also don't really realize that, hey, we're limited by what we know, especially I think in this industry more than almost any, especially if you think about drilling, you're 5 miles away with an 8-inch bit talking about torque and drag 5 miles back, and your gas readings are lagging an hour and a half, and you're getting samples that your mud logger is telling you are from where you just drilled, even though you have 20,000 feet of open hole, right? We have very limited information. I think when you can come to terms with that and really kind of always be questioning everything you know, put your pride aside, check it at the door, I think that's when you can kind of gain strength. And I think having kind of an excess of pride and blind ignorance really gets a lot of people in trouble.
All right, anything to add there, other panelists?
I'll add similar. I would also say unwillingness to challenge the status quo. I mean, we have seen so many changes in this industry. Just think about over the last 3 years, everything that we've gone through with COVID and just some of the AI and the new technologies. If you're not willing to think outside of the box, if you're not willing to try new things, we're never going to advance, right? And so I think that will hold leaders back, that unwillingness of trying new things. So always be thinking about, can we do this differently? Is there a better way of doing this? Is there a more efficient way of doing these things? I think is really going to help you move up and help you set you apart as well.
Thanks for that. Robbie, as kind of a follow-up to that, what's been one of your biggest challenges as a leader?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this a lot. I mean, I think we've gone through, a tremendous amount of ups and downs. It seems like the cycles are getting quicker and shorter and faster. But I think for me, what we've built Citizen Energy on is being a very entrepreneurial company. And I think that's led to a lot of our success. And when we started, there was 4 or 5 of us, and when I used to interview people, I used to say, hey, if the trash is full, take out the damn trash. And that was really easy to do when there was kind of 5 or 10 people. But now, as the organization has grown and developed, I mean, we're just under 200 people now, trying to instill that same culture, that same entrepreneurship, I think has been probably my greatest challenge as we've kind of grown the organization. So, I think a little bit for me, what I think's worked is we focus a tremendous amount on kind of trust, truth, transparency. All 3 of those are obviously very similar and related, but trying to create a culture where it's a very open information culture. One thing we talk about all the time is that the best answer must win. We don't really care where it came from. And so, you're trying to create a meritocracy. You're trying to create a place where people feel empowered, where they know that you have their back. Because the thing that we ask more than anything else in our organization is why. And if you've worked for me, it's almost the only thing I ask. It's just why, to the point of annoyance. And so, you can go ask my guys. I'm sure they're tired of being asked why. But, that's something that I think is really empowering for us. And it goes back to kind of making sure we know what we don't know. And you're going to have to make those decisions with limited information, but you better do the base work ahead of time. You better at least have an outline of where you think you're trying to go. And so, we really focus on having that meritocracy, trusting our people, creating an environment where they're empowered. Now they've got to earn that too, right? It cuts both ways. You don't just come in and have all that trust and all that empowerment day one. But that's something that we focused on a lot, and it's a constant struggle. But I think it's where we put a lot of our energy. I think relatively for a company of our scale, we've done a pretty good job kind of maintaining that environment. But it's a daily challenge, and it's never one that we'll solve. It's one that we'll continue to work at every day. But I think we've done a pretty good job of it, and really proud of the way the team has responded to those challenges and to those incentives and to that culture. And then obviously just getting the right people that have that same vision of where they want to go and making sure that aligns with where you're trying to take the company as well.
Great, thank you for that. All right, moving on to Christian's main question here. How would you define the difference between leadership and management?
So yeah, this is an interesting question, and I think throughout your career, you'll probably bounce back and forth between leadership and management. I would say for me, a leader is somebody that really is up there inspiring your team, inspiring them to want to follow and want to, setting the tone of what the strategy is going to be, and really saying inspiring, but that's really what it is. It comes down to getting an organization to believe in what that strategy is and what that plan is. And then I think what a manager is, there's somebody that's going to go get it done, right? And I think a manager is somebody that's chosen for that role because they're good at doing X, Y, and Z. And so they're the ones that are going to be working with the team, figuring out how to get that strategy done, how to work on that every single day. Like I said, you'll jump back and forth. I mean, I've got, I lead a group of individuals in our South Central area, and we've, got to set the strategy and what is the strategy for the South Central, but then I've also got, my leadership that has our overarching strategy that I'm out there trying to get the troops to, move towards. And so, yeah, you'll bounce back and forth between the two, and I mean, it's fun. It's challenging, but yeah. Anyone else?
As a follow-up to that, does your company offer any leadership or management training? And do you see any gaps in that could be improved?
Yeah, so I love this question. I would say, and granted, I haven't worked anywhere else, but I've got a lot of friends that work at, other companies, and I truly do believe that the training that Halliburton has is really best in class. And so for 20 years now, Halliburton has partnered with Texas A&M, and we do leadership training with them through what is called our Business Leadership Development Program. And it starts typically in that very first kind of management level. And first class is a week long. You're chosen for a reason to be in this class. And quite frankly, it's an honor. And everyone that goes through this feels like it is an honor to participate in this class. And they bring real life examples from a collegiate piece, but then also leadership within Halliburton come in and teach different sections and talk about leadership, talk about the company. And then you finish the BLE1, and then you go back and you put what you've learned in that class to work. And then, over the next few years, you get nominated to move into what's BLD2. And then that's a 2-week program that you go through, and you've got a team where you're working on a project. And then graduate that one. A few years later, you'll go through what's called our BLB3 group. It's 3 weeks, you've got a project. And then every year, Halliburton chooses anywhere from 20 to 30 individuals to go through what's called our PLEP, which is our President's Leadership Excellence Program, and our CEO handpicks the individuals that go through that, and it is a year-long program. Classes with Texas A&M, it's kind of like a mini MBA, if you will, but you are working on a real project, a real challenge for the organization. Typically split up into 5 groups, and there is a challenge that the organization is asking you to solve, and then you'll present it. It's kind of like a dissertation, if you will. It's an amazing program. And then just for some of the, frontline leaders, we've got an amazing frontline leadership program. We've got, we have trainings for kind of those operational levels, the managers that are now starting to learn how to manage managers, right? And teaching you about conflict resolution, teaching you about how to build a team. And so I think the last part of that was, are there any gaps? And I mean, I struggle to find gaps in it. I think maybe the one gap is probably that we can't get enough individuals through these classes, because it really, it teaches you about yourself, how to be very self-aware. And then it teaches you all of those key leadership skills, all those key managerial skills that you need. And so it's just, it's an amazing offering that we have.
So, sorry, I got it. Just because, Earthstone, we're completely different from Halliburton and the other setup, so this is kind of more of a general question to maybe the group and then everyone out here, as far as I'm just kind of intrigued by this, is how many companies or the companies you work for now do, like a raise of hands, if you have a program for leadership or has been offered a leadership program in your all's course? It's pretty good. So I'm glad to see that that's happening more out there, because, Earthstone, and I know some of the other operator groups I've been with in the past, or friends I've worked at, we don't really have a leadership course selection process, or, a whole, alignment with everyone else. So I think it's a good setup, especially with some of the younger generations that are coming into the industry. And it's kind of a different time of trying to deal with different cultural groups and the great shift change or crew change, however you want to call it, as far as trying to find out leadership sides where everything comes in. So I would say if you don't have a program, I would highly recommend trying to get with your superiors and find programs out there that you can go to do even a few days worth of class is usually helpful. Just no one's better than always going to have the right answer. So I feel like if you get in and you're able to find some of these courseworks or classworks to get just a different opinion or thought process, because even great leaders that think that they don't need help on the leadership side, just getting a different point of view from somebody that's been through it all is always a helpful side of things. That's one thing. I think all these people can agree that being a great leader is having an understanding that you're not always going to have the right answer all the time. So getting a different viewpoint is going to be a great move forward on your perspectives in life and being a leader on that side. So it's good to see that we actually have a bunch more leadership classes going on out there.
I would also add, if you don't have leadership classes, there's just a ton of podcasts out there. I'm a huge podcast, I drive a lot. And so there are just a ton of podcasts out there for you to listen to, different leaders talking about, their story and how they moved up and what they did and the things that worked, what didn't work. And so that's one way for you to get, if you don't have those actual structured classes, that's one way for you to start thinking about new ways of doing things.
Do you have a recommendation on that podcast?
Well, one I'm listening to right now that I just find very inspiring is Flipping the Barrel. It was started by 2 ladies in the oil field, and they bring so many respected and industry leaders onto this podcast, and it's just, look, there's not one way of moving up, there's not one way of doing things. There's so many different career paths for you to take. Like I said, I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. I didn't know anything about oil and gas. My friends and family thought I was going to work at a gas station. And quite frankly, I did too. I had no idea what I was going to do with that degree. And so there's so many career paths in this industry, and just being able to listen to the individuals that go on that podcast and get inspired by their journey, it's been amazing for me.
Thank you, Kristen. All right, Aaron, you're up. What skills do you use most often in your leadership role?
So I did what any good leader would do when I got the canned question, and I delegated it down to some of my direct reports. And I asked them, I said, what skills do you see me recently focused on? And they started tearing me apart. Which twofold, right? So I guess I'll deviate just a little bit, Cody. One, I think it's just super important to surround yourself with truth tellers. When you can have hard conversations on what's working and what's not, it moves teams magnitudes different than when you have to walk around on eggshells, worrying about hurting each other's feelings or how he or she is going to respond to, feedback. And so that's a huge deal. But in all honesty, I did ask some of my guys, and I guess some of the things that I have been kind of focused on more recently from a skill standpoint, horizontal accountability. So trying to create extreme ownership kind of across the asset and the team, whereby the drilling engineers aren't just focused on the drilling scopes, and the completion team is not just focused on stemming wells, but trying to create an ownership level where we're filling what I call the white space. And the white space to me is kind of these undefined roles and responsibilities that have to get done to make any team successful, but they're hard to define in like a job profile or a job description. But to me, when I see really successful teams take off, it's because there's this common extreme ownership across all levels of the department, not worried about making myself look bad, but it's worried about letting Kristen down or Nick down, right? The guy or the girl next to me. When I'm more worried about letting them down than I am my own specific kind of roles and responsibilities, that's when I see that extreme ownership and I see kind of teams take off to the next level. Another thing that I think is important for leadership, especially in the energy industry, is amidst all the, uncertainty and ambiguity that we deal with, right? Whether that's related to pricing. For me specifically, I oversee the Anadarko Basin operations and development of continental resources. And I don't know if you can pick a more uncertain basin. It's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity every day, and we love it. But trying to stay level, right? And it's easy to get caught up in the highs and the lows, but trying to maintain sort of this, or instilling this confidence in the team that I'm not worried about any one well's performance or any one month's production. They all matter, right? Collectively, the sum of the parts make the whole. But my eyes are higher. I'm worried about the program deliverability and creating ownership across the team to kind of buy into that program deliverability and the confidence that as a program, we're doing what we need to and we're achieving the goals we set out for. I think it's just super important.
All right, as kind of a follow-up on that, how have you tried to grow these skills or other skills throughout your career?
So maybe a couple of skills that I'm currently trying to grow. Is that fair?
Yeah.
I think the biggest one for me as I've moved into a new layer of leadership, I guess, is trying to think more strategically and less tactically. It's easy for me, anytime you're running 6 to 8 rigs at any given time, 150 MBOE a day, 2 to 3 frac spreads, 160 people, something is always broken, right? And it is so easy for me to get really caught up on the fire drill that's right in front of me when my eyes need to be higher, right? Because that is not what's driving the actual performance of what we're doing. Those things matter. You have to step in when appropriate. There's a lot of things you got to instill trust in your teams to be able to manage. And, I think Wayne Gretzky, famous hockey player, I know this is Oklahoma, I'm not a hockey guy, but I love sports. And Wayne Gretzky, and I think it applies to all sports, frankly, but Wayne Gretzky always said, I don't skate to where the puck is, I skate to where the puck is going to be, right? And I think that's so true in business, right? If we're where the puck is, we're missing it, right? We're going to get past. And so I'm more trying to live in this anticipatory mindset, trying to think about what is the next problem that's going to present itself that we're not talking about today that's going to be a major issue, what's going to be disruptive, where are we deficient, where are our talent gaps, those types of things. So again, just put a bow on that, trying to think more strategically and less tactically. The other thing I mentioned, for me personally, my personal styles, I guess my comfort zones, I'm very action oriented, I'm kind of that ready, fire, aim guy, which has gotten me into trouble a couple times. And I'm also very relationship focused. And one of my peers, Chris Nichols, if you guys know him, he's my counterpart from the Permian Basin. He's like the exact opposite of me. He's very task focused and he's very he's methodical. He evaluates. we'll sit in the same meetings together, and I'm like rattling off all the reasons why it will work, won't work, my thoughts, go left, go right, and Chris is just absorbing it. And as I've worked with Chris longer, one of the skills I've been trying to grow is being more thoughtful in my responses, a little more methodical in the way I listen, listening to understand and comprehend rather than listening to respond. Like, you back up 5 to 10 years ago, I was waiting for you to shut up so I can tell you what I need to tell you. I'm really trying to understand what's this person telling me, and that's something that I'm still very much trying to grow in. But I think my wife told me I was better today if I was listening than I was 10 years ago.
I guess that
You'll have to ask
depends.
her.
That depends if you were trying to respond to her or if you're trying to listen to her.
She gives me the benefit of that.
Does any other panelists have anything to share about a skill that they're currently working on? Kind of like that Aaron shared there.
I think they're all successful. They said they're-
Oh, yeah, there's that. All right, well, before we move on to the next one, we'll hit this other question. At what stage in leadership should you start thinking about succession planning?
I think to some degree, you need to be thinking about it at all levels of leadership, right? I think the stakes maybe get higher, the loss impact potentially to the company gets higher at different levels in the organization, but to some degree, we should all be thinking about it. If we're not thinking about it as leaders, then I'd argue probably have a gap in the way you think about your leadership and your team. I do think one of the fatal flaws that you see with kind of maybe even on the early time parts of leadership, I think a lot of people view succession planning, I think we get a little territorial, which is something that I think can kill leadership. I think we also view job security, and if I give everyone else around me the tools to be successful in my role, where does that leave me? And it's funny because it's kind of the exact opposite, right? You end up being a blocker in those cases. You cannot move on to the next new up, left, right opportunity if you don't develop people around you and your team to manage your responsibilities, right? And be your leader. And so I think you got to kind of change the way you think about succession planning. One, we should all be thinking about it at some level. And then two, we should be thinking about it as an opportunity, not as a, how do I get phased out of this thing in a couple of years?
Thanks. Yeah, you make a really good point there. All right, moving on to you, Nick. What do you consider to be essential characteristics for a potential future leader to possess, and why?
Well, I think for anyone to be a potential leader, we're going to probably start repeating a lot of what we've heard already up here. It's just really knowing the people you want to be with, or surround yourselves with people you can pick, at least. I know there's going to be some levels that you step into an operational situation where you're already assigned the people that you have to work with, and that's a completely different level of work that you have to go ahead and start befriending, work on the gaining trust, and working on the sides of that. But if you have the opportunity to get you around the right people, it's always backfilling in with people that you can trust that are going to get the job done. Because I think it's one of my next questions coming up. I think a huge pitfall is micromanaging. People that are going to be very successful in their roles if you give them the opportunity to do so and let that person shine and continue on. I think an overarching thing that I hear constantly in this industry, unfortunately, is about the amount of micromanaging that's going on. And I think as far as the next generation that's coming up, I think you're going to get into even more of a bind by trying to micromanage people and cause more internal strife going forward. So I think having open-mindedness, people, surrounding yourself with good people as they come in, and not being overly judgmental on somebody's capabilities and giving them the opportunity to fail. I know a lot of people are on tight budgets or on tight skill sets, and you're looking and locked in on a certain person or a perspective, but letting that person get to the point where they fail and then supporting them from that position up is a huge way to gain trust and have that accountability with you on a go-forward basis, and know that you're going to have that person battle it out with you later on when stuff starts hitting the wall. So not being afraid to let people fail as if it's going to be a bad downside to your leadership. I think a lot of people get caught up like, oh God, this person has to be successful, or I'm going to fired or lose my job. Well, at the same time, they're trying to grow as well. And you got to remember the first time you went out, you probably didn't plan the well exactly how you wanted to, or did the exact same job like you're supposed to. You probably had a mistake, and you went to your leader or mentor, and you probably remember how they responded, kind of shaped you and how you thought on a go-forward basis. So I think, it's a multitude of answers and there's never gonna be one exact one, but I kind of went all over on that answer space, but, yeah, to sum it up, I guess at the back end of the day, it's open-mindedness and surrounding yourself with good people and trying to make sure that you're, able to go forward on a path of succession and succeeding, without failure or without being afraid of failing along the way.
Great, thanks. And yeah, one of your follow-up questions is, what's one piece of advice you have for those in our audience that are currently in leadership roles or preparing to be a leader?
I'm going to go back to micromanaging.
Don't do it.
I'm going to, because it is something that just bugs me to death. And talking to multiple, I won't name companies, plenty of companies out there. People do not like being micromanaged. So people want to know that you're in it together and you're all on the same boat, going for the same goal and same setup. And it's instant you micromanage somebody, then you automatically take away all the wind in their sails as far as their potential of what they want to do. Again, yes, there's the corresponding leadership and management roles. There's the spot of, okay, I need to manage to make sure we're going to get to these deadlines on time. And that's 100% along the way. You got to keep on the scope and make sure you don't have any of that scope creep and you're going to get out, you're going to miss your deadlines, etc. But at the same time, people don't want you looking over their shoulder all the time. So I think as far as letting people succeed and push through on their boundaries, it's going to be the best way to go forward as far as a new leadership style set for anyone that's wanting to be a leader. And I would also back that up with you have to have the interpersonal skills. A lot of people, it's going to probably offend, reservoir engineers don't have a lot of great interpersonal skills. They like to look at their spreadsheets and continue on, and they kind of get blockaded into their group set, and they don't like to get out and have discussions. But being able to have interpersonal skills, understanding somebody and how they hold themselves, and understand like, oh hey, Aaron seems kind of not in a great mood today. I probably shouldn't throw a bunch of this on him right now and yell at him for something he messed up on. I should probably find a way to congratulate him on his success of something that he's done recently, and then we'll build into it, is a huge ordeal. So, and I think we're missing a lot of that these days, especially on the younger generation coming up, and I see myself do it all the time because I'm on my phone 24/7 anyway, is the ability to sit down and have a conversation with somebody is so important as far as being a leader. Being able to look in somebody's eye and actually have a conversation with them, not constantly checking your phone or looking away. I mean, looking to the person in their face and having an actual honest discussion with them is huge. I don't think there's anyone in here that could say that, the person was a true leader without actually having one of those discussions with somebody. I mean, it's kind of like a mom or a father figure, et cetera. That you want to talk to that person, you want to actually talk to them face to face and have a good, honest, open discussion with them. And if you don't have the capability to do that, or you're afraid to do that, leadership is having hard conversations. It's not always going to be like, fantastic job. It's not always going to be fun. So having to be able to sit down and look somebody straight in the face and go, look, performance was lacking. I want to help you get better. Let's find a true path for you to get better, and be able to have that discussion and understand how they're coming back and forth with you is huge. If you don't have interpersonal skills, you're going to be in a huge disadvantage, and everyone's going to look at you more as a manager instead of a leader. And you're always going to be thought as just a manager type of person and not a true leader that somebody wants to look up to.
Nice. Yes, look them in the eye, please. Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, great response there. All right, before we move on, we'll hit your last one here. How do you ensure that your team continues to work following the organization's values, vision, and mission?
And it's going to be a combination of everything I just discussed, because if you surround yourself with good people, you've been able to sit down and have conversations with them that are honest and open, and you've got yourself into a situation where everyone's all involved on that thought process and they're on the same level, then you don't have to worry about it, because you're not going to be micromanaging them. They're going to understand the goal. And again, it's one of those things where Aaron brought up a great point. They care more about failing the other person than they do themselves. And again, that's the extreme ownership, making sure that you're ready to go forward on your day and set up. It's every single day. Case in point, right now, and open and honest, like, I'm gonna be out of a job, which I'm fine with, but I care about my guys more than I care about myself. I don't care if I find a job later on right now. My number one position right now is to find my guys a role in our ongoing organization and that setup. And having that kind of understanding that, it's the team before yourself, and they understand that, and then I think that kind of brings in a whole new layer of leadership that, okay, I want to go to battle with this guy, I want to go forward, I want to work with this person. I think if you do that and surround yourself with people that are understanding of that, then you're going to be successful no matter what.
Thanks, Nick. All right, Matt, what's one thing you wish someone told you during your career journey?
For me, when I look at my career, I think it's extremely important to, I think nowadays with more of a structure, most companies are not growing rapidly like we were in the past. So really trying to build a better foundation during your career. I kind of have two decisions in my career that I made that, looking back, were probably some of the more important decisions that I made that probably weren't, the normal decisions to make. One was leaving ExxonMobil, a super major, to go to this independent Tulsa Newfield company. Trying to explain that to my parents. They knew ExxonMobil, never heard of Newfield. But just knowing that was probably a better spot for me to learn more about what this industry is. I give the example at ExxonMobil as a drilling engineer. Never went to a land meeting, never really saw a rig schedule. It was like given to you. You did your job, and you handed it over. Maybe talked to a reservoir engineer once a year. Production was across the highway, just very siloed. And getting to Newfield as a drilling engineer, seeing kind of that well approval process, how the companies run, what metrics you're looking at, how does what we're doing in each of the teams translate into the final product. And so that, my second decision point was, had the opportunity, was offered the lead drilling role at Newfield. And after kind of seeing that structure, I did ask to be a reservoir engineer. So
We need all people, so don't worry about it.
So, sitting there as a drilling engineer, man, I really love this industry. I'm bought in. But instead of making that first step into leadership in a discipline that may not be my final place, I really wanted to make sure I had a broad look at the business. So, to Newfield's credit, within a couple of weeks, I was a reservoir engineer in the McAllister district, and really looking back, that was the kind of key to my success, was building that great foundation. So, kind of fast forward, became asset lead for the Granite Wash, and eventually, like I talked about, the asset manager for the Stack. And I don't think I would have been there without that greater base. So that would be my recommendation, that, don't always be looking for that next promotion upwards, because sometimes that comes too quick. So that's always been my point to everybody on my team and around me, that there's other opportunities to learn and broaden that base, and that's so much, that'll serve so much more in your career than just the next step up.
You may have just answered this question with that, but what's your biggest risk you took in your career and why?
Yeah, I mean, that is true. And I look at it kind of the opposite way. I thought the bigger risk was to make that step too quick. I think we see that quite often, where someone wasn't quite ready for a role and got moved into it. And I just have always preached to my team and members that strong foundation will serve you so much longer in the future.
All right. What was the biggest challenge you experienced as a new leader that might have shaped your current style?
Yeah, I think back to the kind of micromanage and just that first step into a leadership role, you're so drawn into wanting to do the work, right? It's probably a job you've done in the past or maybe just previously, and you find yourself being drawn into the weeds and like trying to make sure everybody's doing the job that they're supposed to be doing, but it's like the way you wanted it and the way you did it, right? And so making sure you kind of pull yourself out of that, I think, kind of mentioned the strategic look, and making sure your head is above the weeds and looking out farther, and not being pulled down into that previous role that you probably were doing just recently.
Yeah, I think that's an easy thing for a lot of people that move up to fall into, especially when you go from you're paid for what you know, and then you start managing people. It's slippery slope. All right, before we open up to the audience, just want to run back to Robbie and answer or ask this other follow-up question from earlier. How can organizations balance the tactical versus the strategic imperatives?
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I mean, when I think about leadership, I take no credit for this because I read it recently, but to me, a leader is somebody that knows where they're going. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, that's it. That's the central theme, and everything else is kind of an attribute that can improve you and your skill set. But someone that doesn't know where they're going is just going to walk you in circles, right? And that's not going to do you any good. You're going to end up kind of at the end of the trail and not know what it was all for. And so, having that vision, I think, is what makes a great leader. Having that goal, that orientation of where they're going, I think it's really important to your success as a leader. And so clearly, I think as I say that, I believe deeply that the strategy side is really, really critical. I might take a little bit different angle though than I think some of the things here. I deeply believe though that the best leaders are the most technical people, the people that understand the base of what they're doing, that have excelled at kind of a lot of the lower levels, that have built that strong base that Matt talked about. I think, that's the way to become a leader, is to be exceptional at whatever role you start at. And you'll find that if you're excelling at the very bottom, naturally you'll find your way kind of towards the top, because people will be drawn to that. They'll be drawn to that excellence. They'll be drawn to that. And I find that as we think about the strategy versus the technical, obviously the strategy is critical to what you're trying to accomplish. That's what a leader is. There's someone that sets out that strategy, but they better have a darn good understanding of the tactical as well, and of the day-to-day, and of how that works. Because I do think on the other side of the coin, you see plenty of companies that have good tactical teams and have no strategy, and that can clearly fail. But I think you also see on the other side of the coin a lot of people that have a very bold or a great strategy, but they have no tactical knowledge of how to get there, how to accomplish the day-to-day. And if you don't have that solid foundation, as Matt talked about, I've seen that crumble equally as quickly as, and if not quicker sometimes, in the companies that have maybe a great strategy, but without the base, I think, you're a house built on sand.
Thanks. All right, and then one more for Kristen here. What factors do you consider before promoting an employee to a management position?
Yeah, I think, at Halliburton, we've got a great succession management, that starts very early. We talked about this earlier. It starts very early in the career, just paying attention to employees, right? And it's making sure that, I think maybe Aaron is the one that said it. When you move up into management, into leadership, you're no longer the one doing it, right? You're the one that's kind of managing other individuals. And so being a micromanager is not going to work. It's not going to get you very far. I mean, nobody wants to be micromanaged. And so it's really finding those individuals that are collaborative, those individuals that can take a step back, let their teams do what they need to do, an individual that's willing to work with the team and strategize on how do we get better, what do we need to do differently, individuals that can work on a team as well. Probably rambling at this point, but yeah, I mean, there's lots of qualities, right? And I think it's kind of different for each person, and it's different for kind of each role that we're looking at.
Great, thanks. That's all for the planned questions. So now we'll open it up to the audience. Chuck, you want to come up here, grab a mic, and we can run it around?
Anybody have a question? Cliff, right? Okay. We'll start with Cliff. We'll come back. Sounds great.
Hey, Aaron, you talked about extreme ownership in your field there. I'm curious, on your team, how do you create that environment specifically for your team? How do you implement that?
Yeah, great question. Easier said than done, right? I think it starts with a foundation of trust. And for me, I try to practice a concept I call kind of confident vulnerability with my team. I don't pretend to know or act like I know or the things, I'm over multiple disciplines I have not specifically come up through, many of which I have, but I don't pretend to know things that I don't. I lean on the experts and I pull resources in from peers and counterparts where I'm deficient and they're more proficient to help kind of lend an ear. And I think one of the ways that I've kind of helped be able to bridge that gap is through that confident vulnerability with the group. And I think through those conversations and building trust, we've created a team that is afraid of letting each other fail. And again, I think that's when I've really seen the next level of success within our group, and you just can see it with the team's interaction.
Dale Hammond, your performance. A question, and anyone can answer this, but knowing Robbie and knowing Nick and seeing you guys on your pathway to success over the years, looking back, is there one thing that you would have, one thing you would have done differently that may have made your path smoother or maybe your ladder of success quicker?
I think it would be not, I think it kind of goes back to what was just said a few minutes ago, was especially in this time period of, the great shift change. And, we've seen that you've got some guys that are in their 60s, men and women, that are in their 60s or older groups. And then you've got a transitionary period where you've got kind of a spotty group in between. Then you have young executives along our age group, and then you've got another gap, and then you're going to continue to see, and unfortunately, a huge gap that's going to be coming up in the next 10, 15 years. And I think a lot of that, I've always wanted to be the best, try to go up, and I think a lot of times what's gotten me in trouble is chasing that. Is trying to chase that spot and not getting that foundation or the base of the understanding, and almost having that expectation of like, well, why am I not being promoted to a drilling 2 engineer? Or why am I not being promoted to senior engineer? Like, this doesn't make sense. And then getting frustrated at the group and not, appreciating the understanding that you need to have that foundational background to be able to move up. I think a lot of that, I kind of stepped on my toe, and got a little too cocky at a young age that kind of hurt me a little bit on the movement up. And, having that ownership and knowing that, hey, you don't know everything. You've got to lean on your teammates. I'm not going to try to pretend to be an expert. I think if, I can take that back and go back to those days and understand it's like, hey, you're not a reservoir guy. You might not get along with them, but they're pretty darn important for you to be successful and your whole operational team. So maybe lean on them and have a better understanding of that. And it would, probably worked out a little bit smoother along the road path down that way. So that's.
I think for me, like when I'm talking about some of these things that I think can make you successful, it's normally because I did the exact opposite for a long time. So, I'm not up here moralizing, like I was way too proud, like I was not humble, I was arrogant, like aggressive, early on. I don't regret all of it, obviously. I think it's helped push me in ways, but, I've matured a lot in just going through those learnings and, being a little bit more humble. And I think almost maybe the biggest thing, this is almost like a life lesson for me, but when I was young, like all I've ever wanted to do was build. I just wanted to build shit forever. And for a long, long time, all I wanted to do was build alone. I would just build with connects, build with Legos, whatever I could find, blocks, whatever it was, but it was around maybe 25, 30, like I'd spent all my career kind of building alone, but once I realized what you can accomplish when you build with people like-minded that have that similar aspiration and passion that you do, like it's so powerful. And the dumbest saying is 1 + 1 = 3, but it just starts to become exponential and you just start to pick up speed. And that's what I think has made Citizens successful more than anything, is that we're building with great people and we're building together. And, we're very involved, just the way we even enter a meeting, like everyone's got the same goal and the passion. And, it's not uncommon to see 10 people up at the office on Saturday. It's not the expectation, but there's a drive and a thriving off of that environment. And so, just surrounding yourself with great people and working in a team that has that goal and that vision in place has been really powerful for me the last 5 to 10 years.
Hey, everybody, my name is Riley. I'm with Patriot Directional. The main theme of all this has been leadership, but an underlying theme has been trust. I have a question for Kristen. How do you train teams to establish trust with their clients? Because essentially that's going to be what grows business and grows success.
Yeah, I think that's a very important question for service company, right? I mean, I think that, ultimately you have to be the trusted advisor. I mean, it's easy to walk into a customer's office and say, here's the price, choose me. But that's not gonna work, right? You have to be able to build that relationship. You have to be able to help them. It was probably, I wanna say 10, 12 years ago, I had the opportunity to actually speak on one of our accounts in the Gulf of Mexico that we had been working on for about 5 years. We had no work with this operator. And we kept trying to do unsolicited bids, that wasn't working. And so we took a different path, right? And what we did was we went in and said, look, we'll help you do modeling. We'll sit down, we'll walk you through what you guys are doing. What would we do differently? We'll help you through this, right? And we started building that relationship with them. We weren't getting any work, but we were building that relationship, helping them with some needs that they maybe needed, right? And then eventually we were able to get a chance. We were able to go out there and show them what we could do. And so I think that relationship is so incredibly important in building trust and teaching your teams. That's first and foremost, right? That has to happen in order for us to be successful.
Thank you all for being here. We are all extremely fortunate that you became leaders in oil and gas and that you're part of our family and our network. And we're all very proud of you, love supporting you and what you do. For those of you that, have your, people here in this room, but say you saw them in high school, and we're all knowing very well what the next generation may or may not think about oil and gas right now. It may be out of their minds, but how do you recruit? If you walked into a classroom right now, Robbie, any of you on this panel, be like, hey, Cliff, wait, I want you to get into oil and gas. What would you say to those high school student, people right now to say, this industry is where you need to go? Lawyers, doctors, welders, whatever career path you're on, think about us, coming on our team.
I would start with the unapologetic that we work for the most meaningful and impactful industry in the world, and everything that we do underlies human flourishing and success to any of the businesses you just mentioned that. And that's what we've been telling students, right? This is career fair recruiting season, and that is exactly what we're doing. We're going into these universities, and we're very unapologetic about what we do. And I know the men and women up here with me believe in that as well. I think everything that we do every day has purpose, and that's what I love about our industry, is you can see it in very tangible ways. And you can define it, you can measure it, and it's just foundational to the world, right? And the success, and everyone in this room, and even the people that don't understand it or appreciate it, it's foundational to them as well. That's one of the messages we've been trying to portray, and sometimes it's successful, and sometimes it's not.
Yeah, I think a big portion of it that you can do and bring up in discussion points, and this is what I've done at a few universities I've talked to, is if people are more factual based, is actually presenting data and information to them that, no, the world's not going to be 100% off oil and gas in 10 years. It's kind of a joke, when people start pointing that out. I mean, you can pull up the EIA report for the 25-year outlook, and you can talk about and discuss with everyone like, hey, great, we love renewable energy. I'm 100% for renewable energy. I mean, how much petroleum does it take to actually build one of Elon's cars? It's fantastic. I love it. But needless to say, though, is if you look at the EIA report over the next 25 years, renewables, yes, has an exponential increase. Fantastic. I love it. I'm not against it at all. But what you don't see is a drop in oil production. Even over the 25 years that they have forecasted out in the United States government, there is not a drop. Yes, the slope changes a little bit, but we're still going to need more. And I think everyone here can agree, tier 1 acreage is kind of going away. And then tier 2 acreage is what we have left. And you're going to need to drill more than that. I mean, as much technology's increasing, as good as it is, we're going to have to drill a whole hell of a lot more wells going on in the future. So this is a career path that's going to be needed for a long time. And I think being brutally honest along the way of going, is it always going to be easy? Is it always going to be smooth? No. I mean, if that's the case, then, taxes and health insurance, I guess, that's the only 2 things you're going to always have. I mean, you're going to die and you're going to have to pay taxes. So those are only things that are going to be, things that are going to be consistent. So if that's what you want in your life, then go for it. But we can offer you a chance to see the world, do great things, provide energy for people, build and provide energy for people that love to have renewable energy, and then, actually do something that's meaningful to the people out there. So I think showing factual evidence to kids these days is a huge impact instead of, I've seen a lot of the rah-rah, like, let's go for it. But, kids these days, especially, looking at phones or repeating stats or informations, TikToks, whatever you want to, is actually having something that you can present that's impactful and meaningful to them is a great way of going forward and trying to get more people on the site. So we need them. I mean, I think we're 90% down at OU, almost 60% down at A&M, 70% down at Texas. I mean, enrollments have plunged for petroleum engineering, and it should scare everyone in here. I mean, it's good job security, I guess, but I don't want to work till I'm 90. I'm sure you guys don't either, and you guys want to fill up your gas tank for less than $9 a gallon. So we've got a lot of work to do. So.
I think the factual evidence piece is so incredibly important. So I've been lucky enough to be able to, I get invited back to my high school in Arizona, and I get to speak to the science class. And so part of the reason I went into this is my science teacher, I was walking around before my freshman year, and I peeked my head in just to see, because there's over 3,000 students, so it's a very big high school, so you have to go look to see where other classes are, right? And so she said, oh, do you like science? I'm like, I hate science. She said, no, you're gonna love science when you finish this class. And well, here I am, I love science, right? And so I get to go back every year and speak to high school students. I don't have kids, but this is my way of teaching them about the importance of oil and gas, right? And so I think that universities is great, but I think it starts at a very young age. I think that we have to start talking to the high schoolers, the middle schoolers about the factual evidence and about what we do and how incredibly important it is, and quite frankly, how exciting it is. I mean, I have worked for Halliburton for almost 18 years now. I've moved 10 different times. I've lived across the world, all around the world. It's been absolutely amazing. And so talking to them about this amazing industry that we're in, I think is absolutely what is needed as well.
Get involved in the OERB PetroPro program. Please, everyone in this room that can, go serve as a PetroPro teacher. I've done it. Just saying, get involved. If you want to do what she's doing and impact these kids, do it. When I retire, I hope to be able to do it again. If I'll ever be able to retire. Anyway, go ahead, Robbie.
I know we've hit this one a lot, but I would be remiss not to say, Aaron knocked that out of the park. That's exactly right. And, the only thing he didn't say, but I'll say it for him, is like 90% of this ESG shit is bullshit, right? And the best way that you can do, if you want to improve the world, and if you want, the number one thing you can do to bring people out of poverty is to lower the cost of energy. Hands down, it's that simple. And that is what we're trying to do every single day. And I just, it's so great to see so many people up here with that vision in mind, trying to lower the cost of energy to increase the standard of living for the rest of the people in the world. It's very egotistical for those of us here in the United States to say, hey, we've got ours, we're good to go. We're going to try to lower the temperature a degree. When there's people starving all over the world and are having to, don't even have diesel to get to work, right? And so I think we have a responsibility to promote that message and to earn it. And, as you talk about getting in front of kids, I think challenging them. And, a lot of these kids are being so coddled nowadays, and and I'm sure my generation was to a certain degree as well, but I think people will respond to that if you challenge them and tell them that you have more to offer, right? And I think a lot of times people are kind of told, hey, you're great the way you are, right? But like, what a dismal message, especially when you're a 16-year-old that's struggling to get by, right? Like, the message is you can provide a lot more to the world. You can do great things, and this industry is doing great things, and we're unashamed of it, as Aaron said. So just echo that.
Yeah, I think, just to kind of go on, I think we're all having the same message. It's definitely we're in a world of energy need, and it's always going to be an energy addition. It's not going to be a transition. The example I always like to talk about is we still, as a globe, still burn about the same amount of dung and firewood that we did 100 years ago. Oil and gas didn't displace that. So you're not going to see a renewable displace the oil and gas industry. So it is definitely a world of addition. We need all the energy we can get for the globe. And back to the point of, you're going to see a constant increase of that demand. And renewables will not be able to displace it. So it's got to be an addition.
Marshall, do you have a question?
I had just a follow-up question for Nick. You mentioned the gap from old timers like myself to you guys, and the gap is going to be created from your generation down. How are we going to try and close that? How are we going to backfill that to keep this industry going? And there's got to be a way, because it can't survive another, bunch of old white-haired guys like me down to you guys, another expansion of that gap. Or as it is.
I mean, you and Phil look like you're 30, so I don't know if there's a problem with that.
I'm old enough to be his dad.
No, it's a pressing challenge. I mean, I think what the best setup and kind of the discussion point of that is, one, it's the recruiting point. It's a multifaceted answer, because you have to get the right recruiting groups and the right understanding that this is going to be a career path that you can continue on a go-forward basis, and it's going to be successful. Because without a new, fresh injection of people in here, you're going to be in trouble. The one way that I think we've all discussed, and I think we probably all have somebody, is the mentorship, and the ability for somebody to reach out and be a mentor to somebody. Because it's more difficult, I would say, in a smaller corporation, but larger corporations, Shell, Aramco, other ones that I have friends that I work for, they have a transition group already in place, because they understand that all this talent that's leaving and going out the door and trying to go ahead and find a way to conceptually, store that data they have in their head and somehow, imply that onto everyone, is that doing group teachings in front of everyone as far as lessons learned, doing DWOPs with people that have drilled in here for 20 years that are about to head out the door. Those are the important steps. But again, I think the biggest one is going to be people that are wanting to reach out for the mentorship and understanding of the bridging. And unfortunately, I think a lot of it's going to have to either come from up above, for the generation that's heading out the door, to go, look, I know a lot. Let me offer it to the right people, or the person I feel like would be beneficial that you've probably had a relationship or grown with, and be able to transmit that information down to be able to bridge that gap. Because otherwise, you're going to have a lot of knowledge that's going to walk out. And then I think it's going to be a group of leadership that's a younger group like us that's going to have to then fill in and understand that, know that, and then try to move our group of people and our personnel to grab that understanding. And I don't think if you don't have that, you're going to have a fundamental breakdown. You're correct. So it's going to have to be all hands on deck, honestly, for it all to work out. It's kind of a scary thought process, because I think we can all agree some of the green hands that are coming out and some of the other issues that we're seeing out there in the field, it's kind of being a little worrisome, because we don't have enough people as is out there, and then having to do quicker training than we would like to get them into a position to operate, and it's not necessarily the best situation that you can have on a go-forward basis. So I know it's kind of a little bit of rambling, but it's not going to be an easy answer to solve the problem that's out there, for sure.
I have two questions for you guys, actually. So my first is, you guys talked a lot about leadership and your teams and trusting your teams. From a service company point of view, I feel like we're part of your team. So how are you guys encouraging your engineers and staff to actually start networking and encouraging them to build those relationships? Well, you guys may have done that, but I think many of us in the service side are facing, we're working out at the lunch hour. We have family at night. So one is, how are you encouraging your team to actually participate and network? And two, is there anything that AADE Midcontinent or in a grander scale that could provide you and your teams in order to help the cross networking or, you know, anything that your teams might need?
Jury, we'll do better.
Can I get everybody to raise their hand on that? Anybody believe that? Raise your hand.
I do think, we were talking about this human resourcing gap, and I do think it's a big concern, a major issue, but I mean, to your point, Drew, there's, it's kind of like the work from home, I think you throw into that as well. There's priorities for different generations that are placed on, some things are given higher priority, like work from home, work out at lunch, those types of things. Whereas I think a lot of folks up here and in this room really put a high emphasis on networking. And I think there's a little bit of a lost art there to some degree. You can kind of maybe look around the room and see it a little bit. One of the things we are focused on is encouraging our teams to expand their sphere of influence. And so, to me, leadership in a lot of ways is defined by one word. To me, it's influence. And I think, you know, kind of that leader that knows where he's going, I think between that and his influence really kind of makes a really well-rounded leader. And we're trying to encourage our teams, especially our technical people, many of which maybe would like to sit behind the desk instead, to get out and expand that sphere. And the way to be successful is to get others to follow you. If you can get a team of people to follow you, you might have something there. But point well taken, I will talk to the guys.
Yeah, I think, so I'm new to Devon, right? Just been there a few years. But that is one thing that we've started to change, is to encourage more of these industry events. I think in the past, Devon didn't really participate in a lot of those. I mean, I know a dozen people that are really from sporting clays, right? And so I enjoy going, meeting everybody, seeing everybody. Encourage that for my team too, is get out and meet not only your peers, but also some other service companies that attend these events. And I'm a proponent. I enjoy going, meeting people, talking to people. I think it's an important part of our business. And then on the aspect of the team, as part of the team, that's one of the first questions that I ask when I'm with my team, with the service company, is what can we do to make your job better? And the same thing, here's some things that you can do to make our job better. Because it is truly a partnership. You know, I think a lot of times we're always asking for a price, right? But also, we're not here to put anybody out of business. This is truly a partnership. And building that relationship is part of that. So it's extremely important. And good breakfast, that's another way.
We're gonna hold you to it. You have a question? I have a question. Okay. And everybody needs to raise their hand, or not raise their hand, but how many of y'all have been in a spud meeting and a roughneck, a green hand, SSE has a great idea, and you buy into it as the leader, as the company man on location, or the superintendent, drill manager, whatever. And you say, man, I think that's a great idea. And it fails. Tragically fails. Pitiful. And you went up to that guy afterwards, and instead of chewing him out, you wrapped your arm around him and said, man, I thought it was a great idea. Let's just not do it again, okay? What is that guy gonna do next time? Is he gonna be afraid to bring it up again? Is he gonna be afraid to ask the question or suggest an idea? How many of y'all think that he would? Because that guy is gonna run through the frickin' wall for you. The dude is gonna be on your team, and that's a leader. That's the guy that's gonna run through that wall every day for you because you didn't chew him out. You put your arm around him and said, man, I thought it was a good idea too. You know? I don't know everything. Hey, let's just not make the same mistake. Let's go going down the road.
Yeah, one of the things we talk about, our team is failing fast and kind of removing the stigma of failing being bad, to your point, right? In my career early on, I kind of worked a stint where I was working sort of a kind of commercial BD type role, and we were working on a deal. The total deal is probably worth, I don't know, $600 million by our model. And the reason I say our model is because we were working on a Saturday, we were at the 11th hour, and me and the finance guy that was sort of the front men for kind of making sure the financial model inputs were squared away. We found a bust in our model, and we were off by about $100 million to the wrong side. So 15%, again, 11th hour. And I called our SVP that we were working for on the project, and he happened to be in the office that same Saturday morning. So fortunately for us, we got to go have a face-to-face conversation. And we kind of tailed between our legs. We took the longest way we could find to get to his office. But we sat down and told him we needed to talk, and I can't remember if it was him or me, or if we just looked at each other for an awkward amount of time waiting for the other one to go. We finally told him, we found a bust in our model. It's our fault. And we missed by about $100 million of the deal. And I'll never forget, because he didn't do exactly like what you said. He looked at us and he said, I could tell when you guys walked in here there was a problem. And you guys were wearing it on your faces. He said, find a way to make this deal work. And we just changed the scope of the deal, right? So instead of the big deal, we did a smaller package. He said, find a way to make the deal work and don't do it again. That was it. That was the conversation. And I mean, this was early in our careers. To us, $100 million, it is still a ton of money. It was a huge amount of money to us at the time, right? I thought this was a firewall fence. Seriously, I thought we were done.
And I bet
But-
you'll still walk through the wall.
And I'll never forget it. I'd run through a wall for that guy, and that's how I treat my team as well. I want them to fail. I want us to push boundaries. I want us to learn things. I do tell them, though, you do it the same thing two or three times down, we'll probably have a hard conversation about it. But I want to encourage that level of trust and encourage that boundary pushing for sure. So it's a great point. Appreciate you bringing that up.
I do agree, and I think the culture has to change, right? And I think it is changing. And you think back, not too many years ago, the job of that tool pusher was to run you off, like test you. Are you gonna make it? I'm gonna do everything I can to make sure you quit, and then we'll get the next one. That's not the case now. We need everybody out there. So the mentorship
Well, it
program.
shouldn't have been the case ever.
Yeah,
For a true leader, Matt, that should never be the
no,
case.
but that was.
It was, there's a lot of,
Yeah,
that,
and it's
but that's
still,
not a leader.
no, and it's still, there's still a little bit there, but that's what I'm proud of now, is now seeing that mentorship program, not at the engineering level or leadership level in the office, but on the rig, in the field. Because like talking about recruiting people across the board in this industry has gotten harder. And we need everybody out there to make sure that we're leading them. in the
Become a
right way.
Petro Pro. Become a Petro Pro. Those kids love it, and they grow up to be you. And everybody else in here that's a leader and wants to join the industry. I'm serious about this. Y'all think I'm kidding. I'm serious as a heart attack. Those kids, when they hear about how good our industry is and what it does for them and our world, it makes a difference. I've seen it. And I'm just saying, it's something I'm very passionate about. And I'm telling you, everyone in here that can volunteer to do a Petro Pro presentation, 1 a year, is more than you're doing now. It makes a difference. I'm serious. Not to interrupt, go ahead and finish.
I think you did, Chuck. I appreciate that. I did, Chuck. Thank you. That's good.
All right, with that, I think we're gonna wrap this up. Thank you to all of our panelists, and thanks for everybody coming out. We'll see you guys all at F5.
Sign up for F5. Come be a part.
Absolute pleasure.
Really appreciate it.
Sometimes it works, but I mean, I'm not much longer. Yeah, I'm not much longer than you real, but. We send off to, people out there. Tough life.
Yes.
Hey, good job, Cody. Thank you. Great. Did you write all those? No, Scott wrote all those. Great questions.
Yeah. All I did was read them. I know how to read. Hey, how are you? Good. Good to see you. This is a good forum. Like, the questions are on point, and I thought, everything you're talking about, this whole mentorship program is something we can learn. But it's so hard to find somebody that's willing to take on that whole. I'll be on the phone with you here in a minute.
Got anything to say? We're still live. We're still live.
Yippee-ki-yay.
Want to draw out more engineers, what do they need? Is it leadership classes? Is it more technology? Is it, I have no idea, but I can get a room full of people, and then it's about 10%, usually engineers, and I'm just struggling with what can we provide.
I think we should start. Hey, man on the street interview. Point over there, okay? Do you think operators all across the board, and it'd be harder for the Devons, but private operators, could we go back to a time where we start offering a little bit of skin in the game on the wells that they work on so that they have, skin in the game? Like, hey, by the way, when you finish your career, as long as that well's producing, you're going to have some mailbox money. I mean, kids are attracted to money just like we all are. And when they see these cycles, and the reason I asked my question earlier is how do we get these kids? Well, because mine are fearful to go into oil and gas because of these cycles of, man, Dad, I've seen so many of your friends laid off. I've seen so many families torn apart, or dad's, never going to retire, all these things. So could we find a model to where you work on this well, guess what? Your percentage, your value is going to always be there. Whatever fraction that is, 0.019, whatever, but.
And there's some privates that do it. I think at Kaiser, right there to their employee base, it's part of their incentive program. It's just, man, the economics and the drive for now free cash flow is so high that it's like the margin is so tight on what we can give up. It's a challenge. But we're going to continue to see a problem on recruiting more and more people into the industry, and it's going to get harder and harder. And we'll see it now where a company our size can no longer just hire petroleum engineers.
Correct.
And that brings a new facet to now how we have to run our business. We're not an ExxonMobil, which I benefited greatly from coming in with a mining degree and had 3 years of classes every week, right? And it was self-provided by the company. We're going to have a new system where we have a development program that's not just a leadership program, or it's like truly an E&P leadership skill set that you have to train. Because the supply for the petroleum engineer is not enough.
So we're knee deep in the career fairs at OU and OSU. I think they just happened either
Today
this
was
week.
OSU's.
Great
So
answer.
have you talked to any of them or got an update on how many people are actually in those universities? Because
Well-
I've been shocked on what I'm seeing in involvement for AADE, and it may be just a smaller portion, but it's scary.
Yeah. And this is just me. I think the universities are going to have to switch to basically a mechanical degree with a petroleum minor. The engineering population in these schools are not dropping. They're all switching. My son is at OSU and he's in mechanical engineering. Right?
Yeah.
And so I think you're going to have some type of blend where these departments can't survive, hundreds of kids to 10 or 20 kids, and it's up and down. It's tough.
Yeah.
But they're not leaving. They're just switching to mechanical or chemical or civil or some other.
That's what
degree.
my brother has a mechanical with, and I think there was a petroleum option when he was there. Or maybe now there's a minor at Oklahoma State, and so I do think that we're seeing that. But I will say that when I came in the industry, I was smack dab in the crew change. I'm the age
Okay.
gap, right?
You got your camera? Matt.
Right back against.
Can you get a picture?
Yeah.
Hey, shoot away. All right, we're still doing man on the street interviews. We're still live, okay?
Good to see you, man. I'll holler at you.
You gotta go get your picture first with all your crew. All right, what'd you guys think? We're still live.
Oh, it was excellent. Lots of good insights and lots of things that I've been thinking about.
Point that camera over there.
A lot of things I've been thinking about, and just trying to. And I can't remember who it was. I think it was Aaron. He made the comment about being slow to speak and being and listening more and being more attentive, and that really spoke to me because that's something personally that I've been trying to work on myself, is just being that kind of leader that sits back and just absorbs information and making more methodical decisions, more strategic decisions. So
Beautiful. Thank you, Matt. Always an honor. Come on, Doug. You thought you were going to get out of this.
No,
you attended. What do you think?
Phenomenal. I've worked with Robbie for many years, ever since he was, at Apache before he went out to when he was part of Citizen One, right? So it's phenomenal to kind of hear the journey and how he was back then to how he is now. I mean, it's light years. I mean, he's just a great leader, and it's great to hear from this leadership panel.
Yeah, we've all been fortunate to participate with them over and over and over again on all their success, and it's neat to see them where they're at.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I think they did a great job. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, no, thanks.
Appreciate it. Hold on a minute. Man on the street here, point at the camera over there. We're still live, okay?
Okay, all right.
All right, Wade, what'd you think of the leadership panel?
I thought it was great. I thought they all had a lot of good insight to share, and really enjoyed the conversation they had. The questions at the end, I think, were my favorite part, though.
Thank you. Oh, up nine?
Yeah, you had a great question. You're welcome.
Takeaway from this, because you got to come on board with this team a little bit after the initial team, and it's grown, but you've been essential over there, and we all think you're all leaders. But, same question to you that I, posed to them. What are we going to do to incentivize the next generation to, he walks into that classroom, how do we recruit them?
Man, I can't believe you asked me that, because I was actually thinking about my answer whenever they asked that. I think it was two things. So number one, I think you've got to show your passion for what you do. Like a lot of people talk about how oil and gas is 100% required, and it certainly is, and it's extremely important. It's doing all those things. But if I'm being honest, that's 12 or 13 steps removed from what I do. But I'm passionate about because what I do. Because
authenticity right here.
Because it's hard, it's challenging, it's mentally challenging, it's physically challenging at times, and it takes an entire team to do it. Nobody here has ever gone out and drilled a well by themselves. It takes floor hands and mud men and and motor hands. I mean, engineers. It takes a huge team to do that. So I think that you go and you show kids these days a passion for what you do, and I think that motivates them to want to do it because nobody wants to sit in a cubicle and hate their life for 8 to 10 hours a day, right? Nobody wants to do
They
that.
want to do it.
No, exactly. So I think that you go in there and you show the kids your passion, and then on top of that, you incentivize them, which I think the oil field probably does already. We pay a lot better than most, but one of the things I hear from a lot of rig companies and stuff too is like, why would they come out and work on a rig for $24 an hour whenever they could stock shelves at Target for $20 an hour? And that's a challenge too. The economics aren't there. I don't think to really juice those numbers, but at the same time, if oil and gas
I have an
continues to go
idea.
up, okay, what's your idea?
And
Let's solve this right now.
but it's an idea that's a question.
Oh, okay.
Could we, as an industry, operators, of course, but also service companies, and this is something I thought about for service companies around Oklahoma that are just getting their butts kicked, boom and bust, boom and bust. So could we incentivize, especially private operators, like Citizen? Could you find a way to work into all your AFEs a little piece of every well for each employee and what they contribute?
I think a lot of times that's built in. I mean, there are companies out there, and I think a lot of privates are that way, that, you may not have a direct ownership in each well, but I mean, you're
Maybe we could work on that.
Well, you're participating in the company. I know there are some privates that, that you become a working interest owner and all those different things.
An override. if
Right,
you will.
exactly. And so those things do exist. I don't know that that's necessarily true in some of the larger companies, but I don't know that
It'd be
you can.
harder in the public,
Right.
traded.
Right. And the challenge on there too is that you're also increasing your well costs. And like you just talked about, it's a boom and a bust. Like you look at the Granite Wash, I mean, how many operators either went bankrupt out there or are no longer operating there? You know what I mean? And so adding money onto that, it may create more of the problem that we're kind of asking for, or that we're trying to solve.
I feel like if we say, hey, look, you come into this industry and you have skin in the game on every single well.
Right.
Maybe, just maybe, when you retire, you've got all this mailbox money along with your retirement.
And let me tell you, I mean, that's probably a way that a company does survive, because when they incentivize their employees like that, like all this stuff that we talked about, people are willing to run through walls for that, or they're willing to make sacrifice for that, right? Because work shouldn't just be always easy and always on cruise. You know what I mean? Like whenever they're willing to do that, those are the companies that are probably going to exist and continue to drill and continue to operate. So,
see, this is the best
natural progression.
Natural progression. Love you, buddy. Good job.
Good
Thank
talking to you, man.
Almost 100% success rate.
Yes.
What'd you guys think? We're still live.
I mean, I thought it was a great presentation. I mean, I good takeaways. It was good. It was good.
Who's your favorite speaker since we're live? Don't say that. I know.
Chris. I mean, he said the most, and I feel like he was spot on with most everything he said. So I mean, these guys are kind of around my age, maybe a little bit year or two older.
Impressive people.
Yeah, I mean they've made some moves. I mean, I've worked with Robbie and Cliff, previous companies, and I mean they've come up from the from the bottom and kind of come up into doing stuff that works.
We've been very fortunate to have so many people as leaders right in front of our eyes and watch every step of it.
Yeah, I agree.
What would be maybe one of your answers to one of the questions posed to them as a leader?
What do you mean? Which one? Like,
I mean, simple stuff like
so
what was
I
posed.
100% with Chris and the micromanaging deal. The point he made, like if you start micromanaging people, you take away from what those people might be able to accomplish. Like, so you're doing a job, like you're doing a job, your job, you're doing your job, and then someone comes in there and kind of takes a little bit of it away, trying to micromanage, making sure you do your job. You did your job, but I feel like that takes away from it. If you kind of take that out of the equation, I think you'll have a lot better output of people, even if they're aspiring to be leaders or not. I feel like if you kind of kill let people do their job. If they're doing their job, and I feel like a lot of people that I've worked with personally that micromanage me, they know that I can do my job. But it's something with them, they try and micromanage, and all it does is kind of create animosity towards them, where you're just like, hey, do you not trust me? Do you not think that I can do my job? I mean, I feel like that was the biggest takeaway when he was saying that micromanaging thing, that'll kill some.
You lose the communication skills between you.
Awesome. Yes.
Shoulder time.
Yep.
Amen. Patrick, thank you, buddy. God bless you.
You too.
And whether it's Bit's fault or motor crapped out or not, motor shop's gonna tear it
I got a couple more.
Like 3 more years. I need 3 more years. I know.
I felt the same way about the last.
All right, we're still live. Just doing some follow up on how'd you think the event went?
Well, that was great. It was really enjoyable. It was nice to get up there and have an opportunity. And, we obviously had a great panel, and I hadn't met actually a lot of these guys, so I really enjoyed that part of it.
Isn't that so funny? We all need to do better, I guess, at networking, because we see each other in passing at these events and you know who that person is. But man, I love crowbarring people together. And you've seen me in action. Like I set Missy's friends up on dates, whatever, but we all need to do better. Like, hey, have you met them yet? Have you met them yet? Have you met them yet? Is there anything we missed in asking you guys?
No, I thought it was a really robust panel. I thought, we covered a lot of ground. So there's a couple of key things I wanted to hit on. I felt like I got a chance.
You guys knocked it out of the park. It's such an honor to watch you guys. Just the hockey sticks have grown from the beginning we met you till now, and we'll just keep seeing you go to the top. I don't know how further are you going to go? There's a good leadership question. Like, okay, he said earlier, where you're going, where you're going. How do you find that? How do you find that thing that where you're going to go?
Yeah, it's tough. It's always a challenge, but I think you just got to get in the fight. You got to be the man in the arena. You got to just start taking those steps forward. And, I was always a guy that overanalyzed, and sometimes that would hold me back. But what I found is just start moving forward. Yeah. And it'll kind of become more clear over time.
That's like, hey, that's where I'm headed.
Yeah.
Take a step today. Yeah, I don't. You kind of mentioned it, Rob, when we were up there, but for me, I kind of noticed when I was too focused on moving up in my careers when things felt like they went slow, and when I was just focused on doing the best in my current capacity and the team that I had in front of me is when things went fast. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I feel like we get so hung up and caught up in the next, flashy thing, and that's when things felt slow. And it's when you just focus on doing the best job at what you've got in front of you with the team you've got in front of you, and that's when things went fast for me. So I don't know. I try not to get too hung up on your question on where do you go next or how do you go higher? What's the next? It's like do great. You said it. Be excellent in the role you're in today.
You guys are excellent. Thank you guys.
Appreciate you.
God bless you.
I enjoyed it. It's good to see you again, man. Always a pleasure.
I'm gonna go get little plug for William and Lauren right here. Look at this right here. William and Lauren Suits, Oklahoma City.
If William and Lauren is watching, I think I need some sort of endorsement deal or something,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah. He brought this home.
That's got to be with business.
Sorry about that. I don't know.
Any takeaways? Any more questions you wanted to ask?
Is that thing on?
Oh yeah.
No questions.
Everybody has a question now, so.